Welcome to another episode of the Sixth Round. Naveed Razi from downtown Dallas alongside John Money Morgan from the fight capital of the world in Las Vegas, Nevada. And John, so much has gone on in this last week. UFC 168, Anderson Silva suffering an absolutely gruesome injury, most likely career-ending injury, breaking his shin in half, really, against Chris Weidman in a very ugly fashion. Nothing you ever want to see happen to anybody, let alone a guy that's considered one of the greatest fighters of all time. Going into this fight, John, Anderson Silva was, of course, knocked out in the first matchup against these two. A lot of people called it kind of a fluky win for Chris Weidman because of Anderson Silva's antics and the way he was playing around. In this second fight, John, not much changed for us to change our opinion on Chris Weidman. Anderson Silva almost got knocked out in the first round, got caught with a punch. They really didn't look all that hard in real time, and then in the second round, through two very hard leg kicks at Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman checks one of them, of course, and breaks Anderson Silva's leg. First of all, take us through what was going on in the arena as you were sitting cage side and saw this transpire in front of you. And second of all, do you think Anderson Silva will or should ever come back from this injury?
Yeah, man, it was absolutely shocking moment. Obviously, you could hear the leg check and you knew there was something going on, but you didn't know if it was an actual break, of course. And then, of course, Anderson dropped back to his legs and held it in agony. And that was just an absolutely shocking moment to see and to saddening, really, to see such a great champion of the sport have to go out that way. I mean, obviously in incredible agony. So, listen, it was one of those fights where you come into it saying anything could happen in this fight. We don't know. But you didn't think that was going to happen. That didn't qualify among the anythings that you were considering as a possibility. It is kind of unfortunate because in a lot of ways, Chris Weidman probably has two asterisks next to his name. You know, the first time, well, Anderson didn't really take him all that serious. The second time, well, this was a freak injury. Hey, let's not take anything away from Chris Weidman. He checked that leg kick properly. I mean, that is a technique. Certainly, you don't aim to break the leg, but it is a possibility if the technique is done correctly. So, and as you said, Naveed, I mean, Chris Weidman almost won that fight in the first round. He had Anderson Silva wobbled yet again. So, listen, take nothing away from Chris Weidman. The man is the deserving champion. I'm excited about his upcoming fight with Vitor Belfort. I think that's going to be a fantastic matchup. And as for Anderson, he says he's going to be back. I'll be honest. Not that I won't want to see it. This is Anderson Silva, but I think I'd be a little bit happier if he'd just ride off into the sunset a little bit. You know, I think right now he still stands as the greatest fighter in the history of MMA, certainly the greatest champion in UFC history. And I don't think he can do much to build on that legacy should he return. I think, unfortunately, he could only do things that might take away from what he's already accomplished.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad, John, because I remember hearing Ed Soares talk about something 3 or 4 years ago, saying that he wants Anderson Silva to retire and wants him to go out on top. And I'm sure a lot of people wanted to punch Ed Soares in the mouth. But looking back on that, John, you almost kind of wish that maybe he would have went out after the last Chael Sonnen fight or something, because it's very sad to see a guy who's a legend who, regardless if you like him or not, even guys that hated Anderson Silva and rooted against him every time he fought, those are the same guys whose jaws were in their laps along with everybody else, witnessing what Anderson Silva was doing and dropping his hands and looking like he was coming out of a video game fighting these high-caliber fighters. But a very sad way to see a guy end his career if he does end his career. And if he doesn't, John, where is he going to come in back into that middleweight picture? Is he going to have to start fighting contenders, work his way up from the bottom? I just don't see any good scenario or situation for Anderson Silva to come back into the UFC. And getting rocked the way he did at the end of that first round in the second fight against Chris Weidman, the only thing that flashed through my head, John, was I don't want to see another Chuck Liddell come through here.
Yeah, and I think fortunately Anderson hasn't taken a ton of damage in his career, so I don't think that he's necessarily right on the verge of that. I think he's maintained pretty good health throughout his career. But as you said, where does he fit in? That's the biggest question to me. I mean, does he come in and fight somebody from the Ultimate Fighter? I mean, what does he do?
Yeah.
You know, you'd got to think he'd be in a title matchup, but I don't think you can necessarily do. If Weidman does get through Vitor, could you necessarily do the third fight with Weidman already? I don't know if you could do that. And, maybe a rematch with Vitor Belfort. Should Vitor prove victorious? Maybe that might be interesting. I know certainly to the Brazilian fans it would be incredible. But again, I just don't think there's that much to gain. I mean, from all accounts, he is in a good financial state for the rest of his life. He's done well to pocket some money. I don't think he has to fight. I know he loves to fight. I know he loves the competition, but I just don't see what more he could accomplish in his career. I can only see him harming the reputation that he's built up over all these years. So, listen, if Anderson Silva decides to step back in the octagon, I mean, he's done enough in his career that he has the right to make that determination. But I got to be honest, as a fan, I think I'd be okay with him just walking away and riding off into the sunset.
Yeah, John, I'm with you. The only fight that I could even imagine that I would like to see him possibly come back for is the same fight that Anderson Silva's management has been talking about in the last couple days, and that's against George St. Pierre, which by all accounts, George St. Pierre wasn't interested in that fight when he was in the UFC. I certainly doubt that he would be interested in that fight after retiring from the UFC, but as you mentioned at the beginning of this video, we never know what the hell can happen in this sport, and we see crazy things every time. So we'll keep a close eye on this. Wish you best of luck to Anderson Silva in health and recovery, regardless if he comes back or not. And we will catch you next week for another episode of the 6th Round. That's going to do it for us. For Naveed Razi in downtown Dallas, John Morgan, award-winning journalist in Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll catch you next week.